and welcome to the ROCKATX online worship experience. You are getting ready to experience God on another level. Whatever you're seeking from God for your life is available for you as you praise, hear the word, and transform your situation. While you're worshiping with us, feel free to interact with our online ministers in the chat and share this broadcast with your friends and family so they can join you online. Also, make sure you subscribe and follow the ROCKATX on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to stay connected to all the Rock is doing. Now, shake off the worries of the week and get ready to give God some praise. Service will begin soon.
Picture on there, because when we look at our lives and our spiritual lives, we all have to understand and agree that we have a very distorted beginning. It's bits and pieces. Sometimes it looks like it's all good, but even those pieces are all jagged and messed up. A lot of times when we're talking to each other these days, we always talk about, you don't know all the struggle I've been through. And the reality is everybody's been through it. They just haven't been through your struggle, but you don't know the struggle they've been through. And so everybody has issues they're dealing with internally. Everybody has family issues, family history, and we all have that good old demon of sin on the inside. He just manifests himself in different ways in our lives. Am I talking to somebody? And so we want to talk because when I first opening the book, it was interesting that I used a term, and I thought this was a great term, just even the preface. Go to my next slide. Distorted. What God originally meant and what God originally created has been distorted. And we have to understand this. That means that all of us, when we look at our background, when we look at where we come from, when we look at our family history, our family tree, the good that we believe about ourselves and even the bad that we believe about ourselves, we have to understand that it is all distorted. That means that many of the things that we pride about ourselves come from a distorted background and a distorted foundation. Many of the things we brag about and we stand on, and listen, even many of the things that we built our life upon come from a distorted foundation. And we've got to realize this before we even deal with temperaments and open up the idea of temperaments. You've got to acknowledge this part. Because if you don't acknowledge this part, what happens is we start trying to cherry pick the good. And then we find ourselves arguing about restoring and maintenance of unregenerate parts of us. And so it's and you come into a church and you come into a setting and you say, even in the Bible study, well, I'm so glad that I found God, and now this part of me is real good. Now the only thing we're working on is this part and that part and that part. But the reality is we are all distorted. We're all distorted. Dr. Moody, why do you say that we're all distorted? Weren't we created in the image of God? Isn't man by nature good? This is always a question, especially in today's society. Are we good by nature? When you look at humankind, is humankind or humanity naturally good? Do we have good intents? Do we have a good mindset? Do we think about each other the right way? And can God use the little good that's in us? Doesn't everybody have some good? And I want to start with, I want you to understand this. Everybody is distorted. Now, notice there was no hand claps. There was no reaction. Even those of y'all online were like, well, I don't know about that, because I believe that I'm pretty good. The reality is all of us. If you don't admit this, we're gonna be in a battle the rest of this book, because you got to realize that we all are distorted. Now, Dr. Moody, I disagree with you. Okay, you want to disagree with me? Let's look at some scriptures and let's see let's see what the Bible says. All right, go to Genesis chapter 3. Now, remember, prior to Genesis chapter 3, Prior to Genesis chapter 3, Adam was created in the likeness of God. Adam and Eve, male and female, were created in the imago Dei, the image of God. And so you have a man being created, man being placed in the garden. He said he was placed in the garden to tend and to keep, That word ebed, that's Genesis 2 and 15. Ebed means to be a worshiper, and shamar means to be a watchman or a priest. So when we look at man's original intent, I want you to understand this. Our original intent was to be a worshiper. That God created us with the ability, the desire, and the passion to worship Him. That's how we were created. And when Adam and Eve were told, to now be fruitful and multiply, and I'm gonna, at an interesting point, I'm gonna build up to, and by the end of the Bible study. But when Adam and Eve were told to be fruitful and multiply, what were they going to create? Here's the question: when they were going to be fruitful and multiply, were they going to create little Adams and little Eves? This is always the question. This is an interesting question. You know, were they called to recreate little mini me's, little cute Adams and little cute Eves? Was this God's original intent? Now remember, at this time, God created everything after His kind. So the cattle produced after their kind, the birds produced after their kind. Am I making sense? The fish in the sea reproduced after their kind. And he tells Adam, though, it's interesting. Adam and Eve, he says, now y'all be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. Fill the earth with what? Little Adams, little Eve. No, fill the earth with worshipers. People who understood Ebed and Shamar. People who understood that God was my focus and that I was to guard that with everything that's on the inside of me. That God was my focus and that I live for Him. I love Him. I want to have fellowship with Him. I want to be close to Him at all times. I appreciate Him for His provisions. I'm walking in His protection. I have the perfect relationship with God. And when I have the perfect relationship with God, then I can have the perfect relationship with you. So Adam and Eve were going to be fruitful and multiply these worshipers, to fill the earth with people. Fill the earth with people who put God first, to fill the earth with people who had a focus on the kingdom, who fill the earth with people who understood that they have a purpose, and whatever God's purpose is, they focus on it. To fill the earth with people that said the only reason we're together is that we're together to fulfill God's purpose. This is who we're going to fill the earth with. Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply, right? Now, this was before the fall. Now, after the fall, what happened? What do you mean by the fall, Dr. Moody? Someone's saying, where did they fall from? What does that mean? That means that Adam and Eve were living in the garden, and they had this perfect relationship with each other, and most of all, this perfect relationship with God. God was providing everything for them, including provision, protection. They had no need of coverings. They were totally vulnerable. They were vulnerable to the world and vulnerable to each other. There was no need for protection. They weren't hiding from anything. Everything was in order. And in this perfect world, God said, you can eat of any tree. You can live in this perfect harmony with me. And listen, you're not going to age. You can eat from any tree. In the garden, there was the tree of life. So that means you can eat from the tree of life as much as you want. So that means you can live forever. In the garden, you're welcome to eat of that tree. Just don't eat of this tree, the knowledge of good and evil. So when the serpent came in, what did he do? He deceived Eve, right? And when he deceived Eve, she turned to Adam and he ate. And now we have, for the first time, a look and a glance into the distortion. Because God said, I set it up like this, but now that y'all have eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, now everything now is distorted. The world is distorted, the animals are distorted, nature is distorted. All of my systems now are off because you guys allowed sin to enter into the world. Am I making sense? Now, it says this, what happened? Genesis 3 and 7. Then the eyes of both of them were open. Then the eyes of both of them were open. What, Dr. Moody, were they blind? What is it? Why would he say this? And they realized that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and they made themselves loincloth. So wait a minute. So Genesis 3:7 says, after this, right after they ate of the tree, right after they ate of the fruit, once again, it's not an apple, it was a fruit. So just I mean, it's a nice idea, but it's the Bible does not say it was apple. They ate of the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Was it a kiwi? What kind of fruit was it? It was the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. That's what it is. Why are you worried about it? You want something too? So their eyes were open. Now I want you to understand this. I said, okay, Dr. Moody, that's interesting. When it says their eyes were open, what did the Hebrew understand about this word eyes? Because the very first consequence of taking, and so in the Hebrew mindset, what would that look like? What would that say to someone who was looking at the original language? I thought that was a very interesting thing to look at. So let's look at it real quick. Go to my next slide. Eyes. This word ayin in the Hebrew, it literally means, number one, it literally means the physical eye, but figuratively it means this: that which impacts the mental and spiritual faculties. So immediately once they ate of the fruit, their thinking and their spiritual faculties were off. They were distorted. It says this: not only were their mental and faculty, it says that this word ayin means that it literally means a spring or a fountain, that from which everything else flows. So literally, I am in perfect unity with God, but I eat of this fruit, and now the source of everything that comes out of me now is going to be off. Come on, Dr. Moody. And my mental and physical faculties now are going to be off. They're going to be distorted. Now it says this. It says the theological workbook of the Old Testament says this. When you look at this word ayin, it means a state contrary to the will of God. So it meant that God meant for them to be one way. But the minute that they ate of this fruit, God was like, I never wanted this. Because now your mindset is wrong. Now your thinking is wrong. Now, listen, everything that flows out of you is off. Everything. So we can't say this part of me is good. Why? Because the Hebrew understood that when it said their eyes were open, it says, man, now can't nothing good come out of you. It says this. Now, I love it because it says, ayin means a physical state, listen, in which one moves about in an erratic manner. That their focus is not able to do what they normally do. It says, it says immediately they were thrown off, and so off, they could no longer function within the will of God. They could no longer function as to what God had created them to do. So now God created worshipers, but when they ate of the fruit, immediately they could no longer be worshipers because their focus, their mental faculties, their state, they were drunk, distorted, confused, thrown off, and not able to do what they normally would do. Dr. Moody, what do you mean? So now we used to be able to talk. We don't talk no more. We used to be able to wait for God. We don't want to wait for God no more. We don't want to meet with God anymore. Now everything about us is distorted. Am I making sense? Now this word, there's a reference to this word ayin in Isaiah 19 and 14. And it says this, and the Lord, it uses the same word, and the Lord has mingled a perverse spirit in her midst. He's talking about Egypt. He says, I let a perverse spirit go in and threw them off. Why? Listen, and it caused Egypt to err in all her work, as a drunken man staggers in his vomit. So I want you to understand something. When I look at my distorted me, I've got to understand and I've got to accept. The first thing you've got to accept is that the distorted you is a drunk man walking around in vomit, throwing up on himself. Now, how many of us would want the wisdom of drunk Uncle Charlie? He's sitting there, he's got throw up on his shirt and on his pants, and he's talking to you about, let me tell you how we gonna do it. When I was your age, I'll tell you what I'd do. Sit down, son, sit down, let me talk to you for a minute and give you the wisdom, because that's how we act. And you'd be like, okay, Uncle Charlie, go to sleep. Just go to sleep. And I'll make it say, no, I want to talk to the whole family and to let everybody know. And you know, have you ever met that drunk person who cried when they drunk? You know, I just love y'all so much. I just love y'all. Shut up, Uncle Charlie. All right, go to sleep. Go to bed, Uncle Charlie, go to bed. I just want to say before I go to bed, I've always loved you. I don't care what nobody said. I ain't never meant to hurt you in all my life. And you're like, well, you just go to bed and everything else. So I want you to understand. So that means this, that Adam's state changed, his status changed, and his source changed. Everything was distorted because his eyes were opened. So why is that important, Dr. Moody? It says that and their eyes were open, and they knew that they were naked. So now, Adam and Eve, now, that means all this time, they never saw themselves as being vulnerable. They never saw themselves as possibly being hurt. They never saw themselves as possibly being victimized. They never saw themselves as possibly being exposed. They were open they were totally open to whatever you said, whatever each other said. They trusted each other completely. But now, when I'm drunk and in love.
Thank you for worshiping with us today. If you're in need of prayer or someone to talk to, our online ministers are available for you right now in the chat. And we invite you to join us again for our extraordinary worship services every Sunday at 10:30 a.m., Sunday at 4 p.m., and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Central, where Dr. Moody teaches how to understand the Bible and you can get your biblical questions answered. We look forward to connecting with you and ask that you subscribe to TheROCKATX on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected to all The Rock is doing. Also, you can connect with us through our website at TheROCKATX.org. Again, thank you for worshiping with us, and be blessed.